Yo, what's going on? It's the NOC, the Nerds of Color. And we are back with another ShoPowSho. It's your boy, Kuya P, aka Patrick Michael Strange, the Adobro, the Babinka boy, the leader of the Holla homies in the Center gang of the NOC. Another hot one for you all. Returning guests as well. You know I love it when our peoples come back. Especially if they were in a group setting, which this gentleman was, and I didn't get to tell everybody's stories. I love to just celebrate our people, share their stories, because everyone we've had on is so extremely talented, so amazing. So I'm super excited to have this brother come back to share and spread his knowledge and just everything that he is, and then what he has done for our community and our people. The amazing Lawrence Iriarte will be joining us in just a second. But yeah, man, he did Lumpia with Vengeance. He's been in the comics game for a minute. He's an artist, but this past year or so, I hope he doesn't mind me bringing this up though, but it has inspired me. He had a stroke, and they're in the midst of in the works for the Lumpia with a Vengeance comic books, and it kind of set him back a little bit. But this man is so amazing, so resilient, that he worked through that. He went through physical therapy. He made it happen. And for that, I'm just so inspired that he never quit. He just kept on pushing, kept it moving. And you love to see that. And for everybody that's going through it, you can just, it's going to happen, and you just work through it. Things may not always be the same, but I don't know. I'm scrambling with my words, but I'm just so honored and inspired, and we've been trying to make this happen for a while, and so I'm just so thankful. Let me go ahead and bring him on so I don't stumble off my words anymore. But I'm super excited, super happy. You see him on the screen. I'm gonna shoot off air horns. Lawrence, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Lawrence Iriarte. Welcome back, my brother. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know if you wanted me to touch upon that. I should have asked you a second ago. But again, I'm just inspired by your journey, brother.
Thank you so happy. Much. Yes. I'm very pleased to be here, and honored, beyond anything, and to share my story. As far as like the stroke is concerned, yeah, I am more than happy to share that episode of my life, because it happened January 4th of this year, 2021, and I was in no state afterward to actually do what we're doing right now. And I am so thankful to be able to talk to you and to talk to everybody else, and to share that journey, part of that journey of what happened and how I'm continuing to do what I do. And I'm thankful, because by all means, at the course of what happened, as far as my stroke is concerned, I shouldn't have survived. So it was one of those things where I could have been taken away by the stroke, and I could have gotten an accident, because it actually happened during the time when I was on the freeway. I was on my way to work, and it was right in the smack in the middle of commute traffic. And wow. I could have easily been taken away, and let alone I'm amazed that I even got to the hospital, because I actually drove myself to the hospital. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I was on the freeway, and I thought I was just experiencing aches and pains as us more seasoned folks go. I thought
we kind of just ignore it. I'm getting older, and
yeah, like, exactly.
I don't like particularly going to the hospital. Yeah, but we got to pay attention to that stuff. And my wife tells me all the time, if your body tells you that, just go check it out.
Yeah, I literally thought it was yard work. Thought it was yard work from the weekend. Oh, I'm getting old. Oh, I'm just tired, and maybe I just don't want to go to work. So, 5:30 in the morning, I was up, and I saw that I was already half hour late, and I was on the freeway before 6 o'clock. And then just suddenly it just happened. I mean, literally it was progression of like, oh, wow, my shoulder hurts. Oh, man, I can't move my arm. Oh, my back hurts. Oh, my leg hurts. And then it was just like literally just ticking away. The clock was just took. I couldn't see. I lost my eyesight. I lost my eyesight while driving. So
what
it was just,
fuck?
yeah. It's like, I told you.
Yo,
Dude, he was like, literally, he was like half my
like one
eyesight
after
was,
the other, like
yeah,
different
it was
symptoms.
like, oh, I'm just feeling old. And like, oh, I can't feel my arm. Whoa, I can't feel my, whoa, I can't see. And like, and so I even got on the phone and said, hey, Siri, call work. Hey, guys, I think I'm going to be late. And then I stopped and I said, hey, guys, I'm going to the doctor right now. And I decided to get off the freeway like immediately. And mind you, I live in Tracy on the Ultimate Pass, like literally. So I have to go up and over this big, this big. If you've ever driven on 580, going back to the Bay from Tracy, California, it is in a long drive. It takes 15 to 20 minutes to get over that hill, and there's no exit. And so the first exit I got off of, by the time I did my phone message, I just decided I'm going home and get my brother to drive me. And so by the time I turned around, my arm was already gone.
Wow.
My leg, my right leg was already gone. I mean, when I mean gone, imagine that you can't lift your arm, you can't lift your leg. And then my eyesight started going. I was just like, wow, I can't see anything through this eye. And it was literally like driving as if I was driving through a hole. So I drove back after I turned around on the line divider in order to find some sort of like, where am I going? So I actually just drove right on top so I could get home, and got off the first exit off to where I'm supposed to live. And I remember passing the first block, and then somehow, some way, I made it to the hospital. So I don't remember the drive after exiting from the freeway.
Oh my God.
I remember the conversation of the nurse saying, Mr. Lawrence, Mr. Iriarte, is there anyone who can answer questions for you? And I said, I can understand you right now. I'm giving you any permission to do whatever you need to do because I can't see you right now. And she said, oh my God. And then over the speaker, I heard, we have a code stroke, we have a stroke. And then the next few minutes, my audio memory is, do you feel that? Can you lift your arm? What is your name? What is your birth date? What is the president? And those are the three questions they kept on repeating. Can you lift your arm? What's your name? What's the birth date? What's the president? And I kept on saying no. And like, I'm squeezing as hard as I can. And their voices kept on going further and further away. And then I remember Mr. Iriarte, we're going to administer. And then they said something, and you're going to feel a little heat. It's going to spread through your body. It's going to open up the clot, and you're going to feel it fairly quickly. And I did. With every heartbeat, it just boom, boom, heat went, boom, boom, heat went. Just, I felt whatever they injected in me was going through all the way down to my toes, into my brain. I felt it go into my eye, everywhere, every bit of my body on every heartbeat. And then I kept on hearing the same questions until they said, can you squeeze my hand? Can you raise your arm? And it got to the point, he's raising his arm. He's raising your arm. I'm like, Mr. Iriarte, we're going to keep you here for a while. And then after that, I just remember resting. And later on, I was told that I got to the hospital in the time that would make a difference between life and death, and I got the procedure done, which is it opened up the clot in enough time, in the small window of time, that would make the difference between recovery and complete damage.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it was a 3% chance here and a 1% chance over here. So those percentages were just getting more and more narrow, and I had made it. So had I people were saying that, why didn't you just pull over and call the ambulance? Because
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
And the time I felt they're never going to find me. It's like where I pull off, it's like no one's ever going to find me. And the thought of not being able to talk to my son was the number one thing in my head. I have a 20-year-old son.
Yeah.
And he was about to turn 20. And it was only like days away from his birthday. So he was 19. And the thought kept on thinking, I won't be able to talk to Diego. I won't be able to see Diego. And I got to get home. But I changed my mind from going home to the hospital. And the word hospital left my brain because I started identifying it as brick building, get to the brick building. So that's how quickly my deterioration was happening. And had I not done what I've done, the very high chances were, one, the ambulance would have found me too late. I would have been unable to talk, unable to walk, unable to just have any communication as we are doing now, or I would have been dead. So, yeah, it just, like I said, it was a miracle in many ways. You know, I'm very thankful for it. And I was told that it wasn't sure whether or not I would be able to draw again. And as I shared with you in my bio, that I've been drawing since I was a kid, you know, and I've always aspired to be a comic book artist. And I had the blessing in my early teens to be mentored by comic book greats and heroes of the time, you know, and of my youth, you know, from the 80s and 70s. So I've always, that was my thing. And I had that chance to be mentored by these guys and then work under these folks as a ghost for years. And now having the stroke, you're going to tell me that it's going to be all gone. And that was like really, really hard for me to do, you know, to actually accept that. And let alone I could barely communicate. I could barely talk. My face, I had barely any control over it. And I couldn't understand a lot of people. And I told them I'm an artist. And there's like, well, you know, eventually you'll be able to paint again. So I decided to bring some of my artwork of the past and go, no, I'm a comic book artist. This is what I do. This, you know, I showed them, like, you know, I really do pictures, you know, I really do comic books. And then like, oh, and so it became a mission for the staff who were part of my rehab to not just put me through rehab, but the rehab for both my physicalness of being able to walk and dress, even feed myself to eat, because I couldn't hold a fork, I couldn't hold chopsticks, you know, I couldn't, it was not normal. It was now their mission is to get me back. You know, this is what I said, this is my goal. You're like, yes, I want to do everyday things, but I want to go back to doing comic books, and especially now that we're going to do another comic book for Olympia, you know. So the second issue of Olympia, actually, if you pick it up, it's my my therapy. It was my therapy that they did to help me get me back my fine motor skills. I mean, every bit of that, from the cover to the interior work, everything of that issue really comes from a person recovering from a stroke. And it was my stroke therapy. So they use that as my stroke therapy. And each drawing of the they were huge, you know, they're huge pieces, you know, every panel. So what you may look at this small comic book actually is huge pieces of artwork that I've done, that the therapist actually allowed me to be part of my recuperation. So I'm more than happy to share this, because it's, I could have. I'm talking to you. That's what I'm saying. I'm talking to you right now. I'm talking to my son. I made it to my son's birthday, and I'm able to express myself, and I'm able to move, but let alone through their, helping me and my son being there and being motivated to finally get a chance to do a comic book again, with my name, and pass this, legacy to my son and to other people is, I did it. I came back, and so I'm more than
yes. Yes, man. Well, man, that's a lot right there, my brother. And I just want to say you're a true fighter, you're a warrior. And I'm just so thankful you are here. I'm not super religious. And we as Filipinos are very religious. There's a heavy component of our culture,
our DNA. Yeah.
And for me, it became very complicated, and I'm not sure how it is for you as well. Mm-hmm. But because of that, such deep religious aspects of it. But it's things like this, though, that there's a higher power and there's something mm-hmm. there. And so I'm just, whoever in this universe, I'm thankful that you're still here with us, brother. And that I can speak with you, and that you're here for your son and everybody here that cares about you and loves you, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thankful. So thankful, man. Woo! All right, man. Let's yeah, man. This is deep, bro. But I'm just, there's a lot. And we were chatting up and down. You're supposed to be one of the first Lumpia with a Vengeance guests after we had the big group sessions and everything. But just a lot of stuff happens. That's just the world and reality, man.
Yeah. But you can see that's what happened during the time. I was still recuperating
in the midst of all of that. Yeah. So, but I'm so thankful you're here still, brother. And so as we do, and you're familiar, we like to kind of give love and light to those that came before a little bit before we actually go into your story mm-hmm. and tell everything that you're about. So let's throw some flowers to those that came before, those ancestors, whether your mother and father's love story or just ancestors before them, great grandfathers, aunties, uncles. To just kick it back and give them some love. Take us back to the prior Iriartes or other members of the family that you want to show some love and light on. That also maybe give us some color of what you would inherit from the bloodstream, the DNA.
Absolutely. Well, my mom is Filipina, and she's from the Philippines, and my dad is Chamorro. He's from Guam. I owe so much to my parents, of what they were able to give to me because of as I pointed out to part of my background story, my mom actually gave up a lot coming to the United States. In a lot of her characteristic is that my mom was she had a lot of perseverance. She came from a very strict Filipino upbringing. My grandfather was the head of education in the Philippines, and they own a lot of land. Apparently they were very, very well-to-do, because as my mom would describe her life prior, is that she had servants, she had chauffeurs, and somewhat of a plantation out there in the Philippines, and her story, which is one story that I may plan to explore for future projects, is that she gave that all up. She gave that all up in defiance of standing her ground, that she did not want to lose her individuality. My mom was a rebellious lady. They called her the rebel in the family. She learned a lot
That Madrigma spirit, I guess.
Yes. She would actually sneak out and go to the movies. I mean, you can imagine this, like sneaking out the window, climbing out a 2-story home, and then climbing over the fence, and then sneaking out beyond the servants and the chauffeurs and blah blah blah, and she would make it out and then go to the movies and watch the film. She was so in love with film, that it allowed her to see a form of escapism. My grandparents apparently were very strict, very old school. Children didn't speak, unless spoken to, and usually was to be answered. And my mom was the youngest of she had an older sister and a sister was younger than that, an older brother, and she was a twin. So she was the youngest out of 5 kids. And she was expected to follow in the line of the rest of the siblings, but she didn't. She wanted to learn her own voice, and she wanted to speak her own mind. And it got her into a lot of trouble, a lot of trouble. For those who've grown up in that era, she was born in the 1930s, and she grew up during the 1940s. So she was a kid of the 40s, just before World War II. And then, growing up in such a strict raising of that time period, she wanted to know more about the world. But my grandmother and grandfather of that time expected her to be disciplined because, he was the head of education out there. And they were also part in league and friends of very high governmental power positioning. And that's where my mom rebelled, because she was promised to actually marry someone else. She was supposed to have an arranged marriage like the rest of the kids. And she had a boyfriend. And someone of her own choice that they wanted to have their own wedding, their own thing. And based upon this event in her life, she was in constant struggle with her family until my mom decided that at the age of 28, she's still living with the family. She made a deal with the servants that she was going to leave, but she wasn't going to tell them where they were going to leave, and she wanted to marry her own boyfriend. The government got involved looking for my mom, and it took apparently like a week to 2 weeks. It was a period. They went from island to island to island, and they went searching for her. When they finally found her, because the government got involved and because of my grandfather's high positioning, they didn't know what to deal with her.
Wow.
So she was sent to the U.S. as punishment.
Oh, and as punishment. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, they were separate. They figured they separate her enough time away from the lover to teach her a lesson. And it was a one-way flight to the U.S. to live with my uncle, who was already established as an American doctor in Chicago. So my uncle was.
So would you say because immigration is difficult? So because your father, because of the power that your family held, well-to-do, I must, like you said, that they were able to kind of skirt that to just, like you said, punish her and send her to America? Yeah.
And in fact, the getting over to the U.S. would have required X amount of time, to clear. Yeah. They made it happen within the 2 days. Wow. Yeah.
So they really had power.
Yeah. It was that. Gosh. It was, it was, it was, they're affiliated with the family of a very famous family whose lady collected shoes.
Oh, the Marcos.
You said it, I didn't. Yeah. So that was the big thing is that my mom was supposed to be married to someone of that stature, of that name.
Yeah.
And then my mom stayed here, and thinking that it was a punishment for my mom because, you know, they were removing her. They thought it was about the lover, thought it was about the boyfriend. But my mom just really wanted her independence.
Yeah.
And what they didn't realize is they wound up giving my mom what she wanted, which is to be completely free of.
Oh man.
Yeah. So my mom never went back to the Philippines.
Yeah.
And out of, which is why my upbringing with my mother was super Americanized, very Americanized. You know, fast forward about a year and a half later, almost 2 years, she met my dad in California.
Okay.
Traveling with my uncle and establishing friends and whatnot.
Was she working? What did she do? What did
she was working. She had an accounting. She was really good at banking and accounting.
Okay. So did they set her up, like, you know, because they got her here as punishment.
Yeah.
But, like, how did she, like, what did they set her up with, like, a, you know, like, what was that? Or did
my uncle was supposed to watch over her to make sure that.
Gotcha.
And so he was her sponsor for her to be here and to see if she will learn her lesson. You know,
this is so fascinating, so wild.
You know, and you know, of course, to try to reestablish the family name because of what happened, because the marriage was obviously broken between her lover and then obviously for the person that she was set to marry.
Yeah.
And so that set up a great, you know, as you know, the status and embarrassment can be very, very high and just very well known, just being where my grandfather was. So it's almost like The Godfather. You think about it, like Michael Corleone.
This is a film, like you were saying, like where you think you might turn this into something. Like I'm intrigued. I'm all the way in.
So
like,
so her, you see how she was supposed to kind of like reestablish her name for the family, and to reestablish her honor for the family because of just, you know, you're it's like the equivalent being trying to be married to like the Duke or a Baron, and then suddenly this whole country is just like, you know, no, you know, this woman rejected this person of high status, you know, and how dare she, you know?
Yeah.
So they kind of like try to bury her, you know, who she was. And my mom was, you know, I have to say, my mom is a very, you know, attractive lady, you know, like she's a very beautiful woman, you know, being 28, 29 years old, you know, and looking very, very young. And, you know, we would laugh because she, you know, people would call her like Raquel Welch, you know, so the Filipino,
you know,
she was,
with that.
She was very, very beautiful. So, but, you know, but then she was, you know, very independent. She wasn't traditional. My mother was not traditional. She loved American films, and she memorized American films, and she memorized like American, like what was going on, you know, here in the US, because, you know, it's the 1960s. So you got to imagine this
and that time period of the 60s of rebellion.
Right. It's that the age of discovery. So my mom grew up in that time period where identity and rebellion was even at its highest in discovery here in the United States. And here it was spilling over to, you know, the motherland. So you can imagine, you know, her mindset was just like, this is what, and then she comes to America, and then even more so just in seeing all these things that are happening. It was the age of change, you know, for my mom. And so, and she came to Chicago, which again, you know, historically speaking, there was again, change was happening in Chicago, and then coming to California, you know, so my mom was completely, here they were trying to, like, grandparents trying to like get her back to traditionalism, and she was in the age of change, you know. It's just and then
wrong move on their part, but
and then going
for her, and so excited for her, you know, that's amazing.
Yeah, and then she meets my dad, who's a merchant marine coming to the United States, and again, my dad, you coming from an island, the Guam, which was now became American territory again back in the 1960s and whatnot. So all these major changes. My dad coming here to the U.S., meeting my mom, and then ultimately, they get married.
Falling in love.
Yeah. Well, I just remember my mom's exact words of seeing my father when she was over at a friend's house, which was my dad's sister, my Auntie Terry. And she said, "Oh my God, he is so handsome." And that's her exact words. Is
beautiful.
That like she saw that she really fell and how handsome and how charming my dad was. And he was like, the best way I could explain it is like my dad looked like, kind of like an Islander, Engelbert Humperdinck. He was very chiseled face and very square jaw, and he rocked that, that Elvis hair, the pompadora, and he dressed. Oh my God, my dad dressed like you won't believe, like the Brat Pack. He was
awesome.
Again, that time period in the 1960s, and they got married and had me.
So you were born in where? In
Fremont, California. Was born in Fremont, California.
California kid.
Yeah, in the Bay Area.
There we go. So tell me about a Bay Area young Lawrence from like 1 to 10. What would your parents tell me about a young Lawrence?
Well, of all things, I actually grew up in this very small town, which is like swallowed up by Fremont in Newark, California. And they call it a dairy town. And literally there was dairy farms. I remember the milkman. I remember the milkman coming to you, delivering milk. And we had it fresh because it was in Newark, California, because we had the dairy right there.
Yeah.
And I just remember it was filled with farms. They had like land. People I could hear chickens in the background, so New York was like this developing land, and it was part of the Hertz property, like Hertz Castle. The Hertz family, like, Patty Hertz and all that. They owned the land, all that land in Newark and Fremont. So they owned a great portion of it. And so a lot of that was in development of that time period when I was growing up. And I just remember just like, the train, the sound of the chickens, the dairyman coming to the doorstep. So I grew up in that kind of like small town kind of fashion.
So you could go outside and not worry, play outside, till when it gets dark, come back inside. Yeah. And then for me, that was the thing I wanted so badly. The unfortunate thing about me was that I actually had developed asthma as an infant, and it was asthma to a point where I started to remember the hospital in Fremont more than my own parents. I started remembering the staff more and whatnot. And I have a lot of memories of actually riding in the ambulance because they had to rush me in the middle of the night or the middle of the morning because my breathing was not happening. Wow. So I had a lot of emergencies, a lot of time behind this plastic dome that they put me into the hospital, and they would keep me there for days. The longest period was several weeks. I missed a lot of school. And so I watched my neighborhood and the kids and the develop of my small town through my window. Wow.
And that's where I had two half brothers, two half brothers, Ronald and Donald. My dad had before two kids that he had before he met my mom. And they wound up bringing me comic books. So my mom, my dad.
Wow, so that's how it started for you as an artist in a way too?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And so my earliest memories were in the hospital or at home, my brother would get back, from the store, and then he would have comic books, or he'd be trading comic books with people in the elementary school, and he would be, hey, look what I got. So my exposure to comic books was just really early. And you can imagine the comic books that I grew up with were in the 1970s. So I grew up with this pinnacle point of comic books, and my brother got them regularly, and my dad got it regularly, my mom got it regularly. And of all things, because my mom was Americanized and she grew up like loving American culture, is that I didn't realize my mom was a big Superman DC Comics fan. And so
that's how you became, because I know you're a DC guy.
Yeah.
That's how you became a DC guy.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, in syndication in 1972, 1973, the television show they kept on playing over and over was a syndicated show of the Batman with Adam West and, Burt Ward. Yeah. So to me, those shows were brand new because it was right in the syndication. So I grew up with this whole DC thing, and my exposure to Marvel came because the cartoon Spider-Man, Spider-Man, the classic 1960s cartoon was also in syndication. So I had these two major influences, mostly DC Comics, but the Marvel cartoon of Spider-Man was on regularly. And so I had comic books and cartoons just bombarded with me because I couldn't go out. I couldn't go out and play with my brothers. I couldn't go out and play with the neighborhood kids. And that's why I also knew there was a milkman, because I was homesick, and the milkman would ding dong, and then there was milk there.
Yeah.
So that was my, my entertainment, and I wound up wanting to look at these images a lot, and I just remember just looking at them, and I picked up the pencil and I started trying to like duplicate what I saw, because my brother didn't get me. I thought comic books came like all the time. Yeah. And then when it didn't come on a regular basis, I wanted to draw my version of like what happened after. So, yeah. I really was so in tune of like wanting to duplicate these images because of, they're just fascinating and powerful, and, and to have like that always around me was a really, really big deal. And I carried that all the way into, my asthma got so bad. By the time I was 7 years old, the doctor said to my parents, I don't think he is going to make it to 20 years old.
Wow.
Because my lungs were collapsing. And if your lungs collapse too many times, they don't inflate back to where they could be. And so they were afraid that I was going to have these attacks more and more frequently. And so we went to Guam, and at the recommendation of changing the environment where we live, where my dad was from, to perhaps it would be different from California weather. And that's where I moved from 7.5 years old all the way into my teen years. And we wound up bouncing around with relatives until we settled
with your dad's relatives.
My dad's side of the family, which I learned, the Chamorro side. But interesting enough, when we finally weren't living with my cousins, we settled in a village, and it was like 90 something percent Filipino. It was Filipino. It was like a Filipino village, and it was wow. straight out from like, the motherland. Like my mom was telling me, like, this is like how she was in the Philippines, because everybody had like farmlands and we're deep in the jungle. I mean, you had to go off the main road into the village off of a unpaved road. So I grew up in a very traditional islander setting. Even though I was born in the United States, it was like I had this throwback of living in a very traditional Filipino village where it was mixed. It was Elicano, it was, Visayan, it was, it was all over, all these different languages and all these different villages coming together. And that was a major influence of culture for me. Just how the expectations for me. I had no communication from my grandparents or my cousins on my mom's side. And so that became the model of what I believe what Filipino culture was all about, from.
So what age was that when you left?
7.5 years old.
And then how long were you there?
All the way to my early teens. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can imagine like that.
Yeah. Was it a culture shock?
Oh my God. Yeah.
At 7?
Oh my God. Everybody thought I was Americano. Everybody thought I was American. They actually thought I was Caucasian because, because I didn't understand that kids carry around machetes and walk, it's just like,
insane.
They worked on the land. Kids worked on the land. You pick your fruits and your vegetables. You worked off of that, and my uncle in the Filipino village as well. My uncle built his house like from his hands, I mean, from the ground. I mean it like layered the ground and old school. I mean, just like, cinder blocks and all this, mixing the cement himself, no machinery, just a shovel and that's how the neighborhood around me was this village. And they did that, and I lived like, our neighbors had 10 houses, and I mean, I lived like, it went from Newark, Fremont, California, and it was like a throwback majorly. It was like crazy because even when we arrived, I just remember arriving, the island got hit by a major typhoon called Typhoon Pamela. Wow. And it was estimated that it set the progress of the island 10 years back. So it was almost like I was living in the 60s and 50s, even though it was like the 70s, So dude, it was we had black and white TV. There's no cable. We listened to AM radio, and it was like culturally, it was that, and then, like I've mentioned before, comic books arrived on the military bases, where a lot of the islanders were families. A lot of the families worked in the military. Yeah. And so we got, like goods, and part of the treats for us being good kids was comic books. So again, comic books was just constantly ever present in my life.
So, wow. So they went there because of, what the doctor said and everything. But
yes.
Now but it's like, again, it's like third world country in a way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did they think, like, I would be half afraid, yes, the doctors are saying this, but how can you be better treated there? And then also though, as a young kid, so again, that culture shock, and then again, and where you could get your comic books like that, but now you have to kind of like wait through the military means, and there's a delay from coming to the country. Yeah. Like, what was the relationship with your family, mom and dad? Like, were you, or too young to know any better, or were you did you act out at all? Like, what was that like?
Well, it was like, you can imagine having this culture shock, right? And so you go to this place where you're living in the freaking jungle. I mean, you're in, like, each house is separated by, like land and trees that are just super, super. I mean, you're driving. Can you imagine driving in a vehicle and you could see the brushes like left and right of you, and then the car's squeaking and going down a dirt road. There's no lights, dude. There's no street lights or anything. Yeah. and then going to your house, and then there's a singular light, a porch light, that is just old school, just like nothing else, and everything else is just black. And then the next neighbor is just like, I don't know, just yards, like several like football fields away. And if you're growing up like that, night to night, and then when it's dark, it's freaking dark. And the jungle is the jungle. And if you're not used to having the creepy crawlies of the jungle life, from lizards to spiders to cockroaches to, beetles and you name it, around snakes, you suddenly have a great appreciation of your family and your parents, and your father, my dad, who suddenly becomes like Tarzan, like he's like Lord of the Jungle. Like obviously, when my dad touched down on Guam, it's like his accent like kicked up, I'm just like, who are you? My dad was like a Batman, Tarzan, MacGyver all rolled in one, because he showed so much on the day-to-day lifestyle of living on an island and taking care of your homes and worrying about floods and typhoons and that sort of thing. I mean, dude, we went through a season where every year you wondered if you were going to have a flood, and we had floods in our village like on a regular basis. So this things happening were so new to me, so unfamiliar to me, that I was looking toward my mom and dad to like, what the heck? How is life? I mean, you don't go, oh, we don't go into Disneyland. It's just like, are we going to survive? Are we going to have food? It was like totally, I mean, you rely on your family. And that's where I think I learned the most within this village, is the respect and the appreciation of your family. And we, even my cousins within their family, it was like they were tight. And if you didn't behave, or respect, show the proper respect of where you were living at, the whole village knew. I mean, it's like everybody knew your business.
Yeah.
It was, oh, that's the boy who's like crying all the time. Oh, that's the one who doesn't listen. So it quickly, you learn respect, you learn, tradition, you learn custom, you learn all these things. I mean, like I said, we kids would have machetes, and they were like, oh, go out and get us, these vegetables. And you go out and you hack your vegetables and you pick it with your family, I mean, and it wasn't like you get in the car and you walk, you had chickens, and you go out and you get your chickens and you get your eggs, I mean, it was just, dude, it was, the childhood I grew up in the US to the childhood that I developed when I left the US, compared to the childhood to my son, is like, I feel like, wow, we are radically different. I feel like I relate more to someone from the 1920s, the 1910s.
Yeah.
Because, we were dealing with hardships of the land, an island that was at the mercy of Mother Nature, and then you had to, we fished. My dad fished religiously, like weekends we are fishing, we're going to get some food, and he would be out there for like hours, regardless. And then he would go spear fishing. And dude, we went crab hunting. We went hermit crab hunting to get for bait for fishing at midnight in the jungle. We would go to the beach in the jungle with the flashlight and carry those painter buckets, 5-gallon buckets, and load up looking, because the hermit crabs will come out late at night, and then we would load that up. And so you're a kid. Imagine this. You're a kid, dude.
Yeah.
You're in first grade, second grade, third, imagine what you were doing in first and second grade. Would you have gone out midnight with a flashlight and then seeing all these like creatures of the night. Oh, imagine how you would take that as a kid.
Yeah.
That was my childhood
Yeah.
of like this world of what my dad. So that's why I looked to my father like, holy cow.
Yeah.
You know, like, and my mom did laundry by hand and hung it up. It was just like an old school way of living. So my appreciation of getting, of getting like, a paper product of superheroes was just like, it was gold, it was like gold to me. It still is, just like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing,
Totally.
So, yeah. So I had, and my brothers have like this total old school, like, be responsible, your parents are gods type of deal. I mean, in those early age growing on the island, like, you learn that your family knew how to survive, and you went to their knowledge to get that, and then it changes when you become a teenager.
So let's get there. So what was the decision to come back to the States in your high school years?
So like you said, what was the mystery of, like, how was my health going to get better on this, I wouldn't say primitive, but, an island that what the doctors had discovered here in the United States is that I was allergic to basically everything California.
Oh my gosh.
So the California, grass, the California trees, the California, just California's, like, because there's all these different, there's California, vegetation that I was, and like I said, I grew up near a farm. I was allergic to the cows. I was allergic to all the livestock, I was allergic to cats and dogs and all that. My immune system was so weak growing up in the US that it could not handle day-to-day California living, and so I would laugh, I would get sick, I would cry, I would get sick because of my breathing would be so erratic, and if I ran, I got sick. So anything that caused agitation in my breathing was difficult. I go to Guam. The weather is tropical. The weather is humid. There is no California, pine trees. There's no this or that. The livestock is grown on, on the island, so everything is from the island. So what Guam allowed me to have is the opportunity to build immunities that would later allow me to grow and strengthen that I need to later on to explore out of the island. And so they realized after several years that I haven't had an asthma attack, that my asthma was almost virtually gone. That, they were trying to actually find out what was the agitations, and they couldn't find any agitations on Guam that would trigger my asthma. And my mom and dad had to come to a decision because I was about to enter that age group where high school and colleges were about to happen. And so they decided to, while they had the chance, is to make sure that I came back to high school in the US to get an American education. So that way I could qualify for something like, they were aspiring something very big, and I wound up doing my high school years here in California, back in the same town that I grew up with, ironically.
They moved back to the same area?
Yeah, Newark.
Wow.
We went back to Newark, and it was funny. It's just the places were familiar. And sure enough, my body had developed an immunity that my asthma was not triggered no longer by just randomness. At least I could have allergy shots that would happen over the years that would help me build an immunity. But I was now in a point where I actually could live somewhat normal.
Yeah.
And that's how I came back to California. And that's how, through California and through my great nerd friends, because I brought my comic books almost everywhere I went.
Yeah.
As a security, I packed it up in my suitcase, brought it in on my backpacks, and in between classes, I would be drawing comic books. I was invested. This was like, there was no doubt that this is what I wanted to do.
So then I would say, what was the family vibe? So like, obviously you can have better access to comic books, better access to a lot of different things. What was the family environment like? So was everybody happy to, finally, because of everything you went through? But then I'm sure it really brought you all together. As you said, as a family, you really appreciated your parents more. So the family vibe, your brothers, your stepbrothers, and, now we're back. The glue was kind of set, as a family, and now you can explore a little bit.
And that was the thing, is that my older brothers wound up like feeling, what, they felt more islander.
Oh,
they felt more tied.
So they loved it being there.
They grew up and were really tight with the island life, and they were able to relate to it more.
Okay.
And so my brothers Ron and Don, actually Don wound up going into by the time we got back, they were old enough to enlist into the military.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So my brothers decided, rather than be locked down here in the US, they joined the US military with the option to come back to Guam or the US.
Gotcha.
So my older brother Don still remains on Guam today.
Okay.
My other brother Ron stayed in the Army, and he wound up deciding to be part of the U.S. So he actually lives like 45 minutes away from where I live now. So he became Americanized. But my brother Don, he never really left. The island just really spoke to him, like in a very, very, very big way.
Yeah. But they were happy for you. In regards to what I was saying, they were, they fell in love with the island, but parents were happy, and just everyone just to kind of just go back a little bit, and for you, obviously for a better education.
Definitely found that the U.S. was definitely the place that needed to happen for me and my younger brother. We definitely needed to. They knew that the options would be better for us, because we were definitely the nerds. Me and my younger, we were definitely the nerds. We weren't as had the variety as my brothers Ron and Don, but the nerdum was definitely here for us. And like you said, the comic books became a mecca for me when I came to the US, and a classmate actually brought me to my first comic book store, and it was just
heaven.
It just blew my mind away. Like this is.
Do you remember the name of that comic store? Is it still around?
The Comic Zone. It was in Fremont, California, owned by a guy named John. We attended that comic place for years until they finally retired. He finally retired the store after close to 20 years.
Wow.
But that store brought me to my first comic book conventions.
Hell yeah.
Which opened the door to actually me meeting my comic book heroes, my actual comic book artist heroes from the industry.
I love
that store opened up the whole network of where I was like, my gosh, this is a world that I never knew about.
So let's talk about, because we're in high school now. You're in high school there. Then obviously, so that's your dream. You grew up loving comic books, and that was what kind of your happy place, right?
Yes.
I know it was for me, right? So but when we're in high school, that's where we're making those decisions for our future. So did you take art classes? Did you take any electives to
oh my god, everything?
And what was that like?
Everything I took was art related, and everything I drew was superhero related. And it was funny, like so you dial back, this is the 1980s now.
Yeah.
Prior to the Batman movie. Okay. So the only superhero related thing in media at this time successfully has been Superman, Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
And so no one had this reference that how in the world are you going to do, how are you going to aspire to do anything else, Lawrence? Are you so whenever someone asked me, I just said I want to do comic books. And the only way that my mom and dad would allow me to do comic books, draw comic books, and have comic books is because I was a straight A student. I really just excelled in math and just overall. I was A. If I wasn't getting A's, it was a B plus. So it's just A.
That was your
B.
motivation.
Yeah, it was. I was Bruce Wayne, my friend. When I learned that Bruce Wayne was a normal guy, Batman was a normal guy, and he did X, Y, and Z. He worked out and then he studied, that became like a motivating thing. And then knowing that Robin was the kid who was just like, wow, this is a partner. Here he is. He's not the sidekick. He's a partner. Yeah. That fascinated me. That, the comic book world of these two heroes made me go, wow, they made themselves. And the whole thing about Spider-Man and Peter Parker being like a genius at the age of 16 just fascinated me. That Peter Parker was a genius before he became Spider-Man. He was smart enough to actually make web shooters and web formula.
That was insane.
Can you
chemical that would spray out and stay for a while. That's
and
yeah,
it's brilliant. So you have a 16-year-old who had the formula chemically, but then he had the ability to construct a micro mechanism that was able to shoot this stuff and contain this stuff, from home parts, from the store. He didn't go to a lab, a science factory. He went to, whatever. So that he
didn't have Tony Stark money.
No, he didn't. And he wasn't Bruce Wayne. And so these two universes, the Spider-Man universe and the Batman and Robin universe just fascinated me. And I tell you, if you talk to me when I was like 15 and 16 years old, I was invested. That world, just like I believed it. And so my grades, my thing with my counselors that would allow me to take repetitive art classes. So you already took this art. Well, how about you take this? No. Can I have another art class? So I took art classes. I took drafting classes. I took everything that would allow me to be a really good artist as much as possible.
Did the technical side of art bother you? You know how there's, you wanted to be a comic book artist. Right. I wanted to be a comic book artist. How to draw comics the Marvel way was my Bible.
Yes.
If we weren't doing that in school, I didn't want to hear it. Certain classes bored me. I wanted to do this. So what was that like for you? Were you the same way?
So I started that way. So what changed me is that when I started meeting these actual comic book artists, they changed my world. When specifically, there's a few, and I'm going to name them by name because he's like an uncle to me. Brent Anderson, who's the artist of
Justice League, right?
He drew a lot, but one of his claims to fame is God Loves, Man Kills, the X-Men graphic novel.
Yes.
The first graphic novel of Marvel Comics. Brent Anderson did that. And he's also the artist of Astro City, who's the co-creator of Astro City. I met him shortly during the time when God Loves, Man Kills. So when that graphic novel came out, I didn't know this man was the artist, and he was also the artist of Kazar for Marvel. So he opened my mind. When I met him, what drive the two of us that got our conversation going is that in addition to comic books and loving Batman so much, is in knowing that Batman was this regular guy, is that I was a big Bruce Lee fan. I mean, again, I was in that era where Bruce Lee had shortly passed away in 1972. So Bruce Lee was part of my genetic makeup of fandom. Like, he was a recent guy. He only had been gone for 5 years, for me, as a kid. And so when I met Brent Anderson, he had been drawing these drawings, and one of them I realized that he did like a Bruce Lee. He was doing a series of Bruce Lee drawings because he was getting ready to do the Kato miniseries, and he was using Bruce Lee as his model. And we got talking, and then we just jammed. That he saw that here I was, this like kid, this teenager, had collected the same books that he had, and he was, in his 30s, and I was like this teen, and I had the same collection, and I love Bruce Lee. I mean, I had like Bruce Lee plastered all over the place, and I was, again, a major fan of comic books. And he started talking to me, and I was brave enough to ask him, like, what do I need to do what you do? And then he said, draw every day. These are the books. And I said, yeah, I have, How to Draw Comic Books the Marvel Way. And then I have this book, and he says, what you can really do is that. Then he gave me a list of comic books, excuse me. And they were not comic books, but they were books of artists. And I was blown away that he told me that I could take classes that would make me a better artist, that would make me a better comic book artist. And through Brent, and then meeting the legendary Neil Adams, and then meeting George Perez, these guys really opened my mind about learning formally from people that you would never think that would draw comic books. And I wanted to do everything and anything to be that good, to understand that. And he said, you're not going to be drawing comic books with all these poses. You're going to draw Clark Kent, changing his glasses, or maybe brushing his teeth or shaving, or, they started explaining, like, combing their hair. And he's like, yeah. And I started, talking about Neil Adams. And it turns out Brent Anderson was a student of Neil Adams. And so here I was talking to these guys who are just like related to each other in some way. And they were telling me the secrets of their abilities. And I would started to really look at their work differently, looking at, that's what he's doing. This is what he's doing with these hands, these hands are being like this, or when someone's talking, the expressions, and it was no longer just like grimacing. It wasn't a grimacing Batman and, that sort of thing. It was like, looking at Peter Parker when he has emotion, and there's so many things that they were pointing out to me that made me go, oh, and it just clicked. They were telling me a reality that when I went to the art class, that, yeah, my teacher didn't know who these characters were, but they definitely could tell me, how to draw the anatomy, the arm, the body, and whatnot. And I learned from these artists that I can actually take a college class while I was still in high school. So I actually went to the community college and took anatomy classes. I actually registered during the summer and took art classes that were meant for adults.
Wow.
So, and I just submitted. I just gave in, knowing that this is what they were talking about, and this is what was going to let me get into the industry. And I started to really understand, that I didn't have to draw like this comic book artist, but these are the secrets that they have that would allow me to do what they're doing.
I
So
absolutely love that, man. Yeah.
it's a different, it's a different mindset,
of course. Yeah. No, I agree with you completely. I had my last ShoPowSho interview. I had Keith Sakat on.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Talking to Keith. Do you know Keith?
Yeah.
Good guy. And he was telling me about the same kind of people that, spoke to him like yours was Brent Anderson. I can't recall who the gentleman he said was kind of like talked to him, but he reminded me, for me, when I was a young artist living in Seattle, Mike Grell.
Yes. Mike
Grell and Mark Bagley.
Mark
Bagley and Randy Eberline. Because they were both penciler inker on Amazing Spider-Man at the time when I met them. They were doing the Carnage thing at the time. And I'll never forget, as a young teenager, getting their input and just, to keep at it. And I don't know who said it. I want to say it was Mike Grell, but they're like Steady Anatomy. And I remember picking up Bern Hogarth.
Yes, Bern Hogarth. That's
Bern Hogarth books and just everything else under the sun. Because I told him like how to draw comics. Buscema was my guy. My Marvel Way was my Bible. But they're like, no, you gotta, respect to Buscema, but you gotta study everything else outside of it. Respect your art teacher.
Yes.
Do that still stuff. Just draw everything. And shout out to just the amazing teachers and instructors throughout that helped us framework as artists. So all right, so you're in high school, you're learning, you're taking college courses. I love that. That's absolutely amazing. But you're getting ready to graduate. So let's go into and you've heard the show. Like, art is okay, it's an elective, and you said you got straight A's, so you could do your art.
Yeah.
What was where did they want you to go to school? What did they want you to do after high school? Obviously, I know your answer. You wanted to become an artist.
Yeah.
What panned out? Tell me. Going into now graduating and then fine tuning into becoming a professional.
So it's funny, like you say that is that because of my grades and because of like I was in the honor society and everybody, I don't know what it was. I mean, it really is because of my grades. Everybody thought I wanted to be everything but an artist. Because of my grades, because you saw my name always within the top 5 of the students of the honor roll. Whenever they sent out this newsletter to the family, my name was somewhere on that list of the top 5, maybe the top 10. I mean, we had some seriously smart people in my school, but I seemed to mingle. my name always was coupled in there somewhat. So all my counselors always thought that I would be like a mathematician. They thought that I was going to be a teacher. They thought I was going to be a chemist, because every class that I took, they thought that was it. So along the lines, they were actually thinking mathematician. They were thinking about along the lines of engineering. And, I had no, that was the furthest thing, but that was everything they were sending me was always these scholarships to these schools. So when I applied for college, I got into every UC. I got into Berkeley. I got into UCLA. I got into UC Santa Cruz. I got in everywhere that I applied in. The thing is, I didn't know what to do with that. And my path was really comic books. Really, really, really comic books, to a point where by the time I graduate, I had developed a relationship as like a mentor with Brent Anderson. Brent Anderson, this was the coolest thing that he did, is that he introduced me to other people in the conventions. Hey, this is Lawrence. So I no longer was this faceless name among the fans of Comic-Con and WonderCon. I was actually being introduced to people. This is Lawrence. And so conversations at the convention would allow me to meet people by name, like people from, so if you can imagine from the 80s of the list of the comic legends. And I'm going to be very careful here because of those names of this time period of the 80s and late 80s, I was able to get a chance to ghost and work under. Brent would have these parties, these artist parties, that he would invite these artists to his home or to his hotel, of the time. And then we have this pizza party, and then all these artists would bring their artwork to share. So you can imagine these legends going to Brent's house or the hotel or wherever they were gathering at the time. Usually it was his house. So we would schedule a date, and then we would go, and then I got invited, me and a few other young artists who were already been introduced several times over the road, and we would exchange, we would show our art, we would get personal critique. We were literally putting our work right next to so-and-so and so-and-so. I mean, imagine like putting your artwork next to someone that you just read in the comic book, and then there it was next to another, and they would go, hey, that's pretty good. Hey, have you thought about this? This is pretty Hey, you seem to be like drawing, like, what is it do you want to do? It became like the major network that I've ever had. And I'm so blessed to be this kid who at 16, 17, 18 years old was constantly being exposed to this professional world. And maybe it was the way I carried myself, and maybe that, they thought I was a lot older. But there I was with these giants, and I just was not like, and I wasn't like fanning off. I was just asking, what do I need to do? What should I work on? I was no longer, I could never do it. I just wanted, just tell me what I need to do, and I'm going to do it. And through that, while I was in high school, while I was graduating, I already had established ties with Tom Orodowski, who worked on the X-Men, who gave me a letter. And then I got a letter from the creator of Concrete, Paul Chadwick.
Yeah.
And so these guys who worked, and they were sending me like, this is before email, dude. This is like letters. I was getting freaking letters. Yeah. Hey, Lawrence, it's great meeting you over at Brent's. And, I heard that you wanted to check this out to, check, this person out, this person. And these were people from Lucasfilms. They were, from, you remember that cartoon Droids? Yeah. In the Ewok Avenger. So I was getting sample panels from these television shows from these guys who are comic book artists who actually worked on those shows.
Yeah.
And so that was my, here I got into these colleges, and then I'm getting this whole other perspective from these professional guys that they're not saying don't go to school, but there is other work that comic books could bring you into that's relatable. And if you work on your artwork, this is what you can actually do. So I was getting these like constant mentoring of these guys, and then meeting up them later at a convention, and then asking me like, what do I, where I'm going to go. And at the age of 19, I graduated at 19 years old. At the age of 19, I was already ghosting. And then I got the jobs freelancing. And so I thought, I'll just go to community college because I'm already working.
Yeah.
And so my path actually got me to work under these guys. And I got a graphic arts job before I got my degree. Wow. And so I figured, why would I even go back to school?
Yeah.
And so I didn't go to school all the way till I was like 25 years old, because I was already doing the work. I was already working at the conventions. I was already ghosting for this artist. I was already doing storyboards. I was like, why bother?
Yeah.
Like, why bother? So, this is like now in the 90s, and I was working for a company, a graphic arts company. And of all things was the development and the packaging and the artwork for Apple computers.
Oh, wow.
Before Apple computers blew up to what we know as Apple computers, the Macintosh. Because I remember doing paste up work for the Apple keyboard and the backside of the packaging by hand before, because there was no computers to do it. So what we wound up doing is drawing everything big and then shooting it in the graphic arts room and photography. So I learned from 19 years old till I was in my 20s, all this stuff working for Apple computers before the age of computers actually hitting off.
Wow.
Is just weird. I was like in the cusp of change of like digital and the comic book world, and you know, that 90s blow up that started to happen. Batman happened in 1989. It changed. Things were changing for me. And here I was at this kid who had to learn to like adapt and figure out, this kid from Guam. You know, here I was learning to adapt with the professionals and deciding what do I want to do and how do I want to do it. And living on my own. I was already living on my own. You know, I had a girlfriend, a fiance, and I was living in an apartment building. I had all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, just
so the parents were like, okay, so you decided go to community college. What did the parents say? I just had to throw that tidbit in there. They had to have said something. What did mom and dad say?
Here's the thing. So I'm the first one to graduate from high school in my family.
Oh, okay. Because the brothers went into the military.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm the first one to graduate from high school.
Yeah.
Directly from high school. I'm the first one to get the type of grades that I got. And even though my mom, comes from, she's like, was expected. But as far as like my dad's side of the family, I was like, I did something. Yeah. And then my dad, coming from a very working person, me getting a graphic design job, I wouldn't say he couldn't say anything, but he was like, you have the job. It's like, it's like
your mom, as we know, your mom's story was a rebel. So
yeah. So my mom is like, my mom even told me, maybe you should take some time off from school.
Oh shit. So she was kind of already for it then.
She was like, she said, you've done enough school.
Yeah.
And you got these grades.
Yeah.
And you're working, and then I'm working as like, so, and then, part of the story is that when I came from Guam into the United States, I had been working since I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
14 years old. And I never stopped. Yeah. Meaning working, I actually worked illegally as an immigrant among the immigrant farmers. Like because I was back in Newark. So I was doing like a lot of that. And then I became a janitor while I was going to high school and junior high at 14, 15 years old. I was a janitor.
Yeah. And
then I worked in the food, and I worked in the mall. I worked and so my parents have known me as someone, the moment we came to the US, I saw it truly as a land of like, even though I was born here, as a land of like, I'm going to make money and I'm going to get comic books and I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And so I already, by the time I was, 20, 21, I was living on my own. I had, health insurance and life insurance. I was living with my fiance, and I was, I thought I knew what I thought I knew what I knew and had it going on, and I had it all planned out. And then life changed at 25, at 24, 25, at a turning point that just made me go, I want to get educated.
Okay.
And I went back to school.
Okay.
And I went to the Academy of Art University in San Francisco because I wanted to be better. And I learned from the other artists of the time, because this is the 90s, is that the explosion of the comic book world was changing, because that big moment when suddenly there was all these comic book stores. You would find comic books on the QVC channel, and there were people drawing comic books, and we were being hired like we were as clones, because we could draw like this person in the month and this person in the month. So all us guys who are now animators, professional animators now, were being brought in to these people to help keep up their deadlines, because both Marvel and DC were doing variant covers of,
the metal cover and this cover and that cover. And then you had several titles of Spider-Man, and you had several titles of Batman, and just the explosion of that 90s era affected us amateurs or people who were aspiring or being looking toward. We suddenly got pulled up. And in that era, Photoshop and Adobe exploded, which was the irony that the Macintosh computer exploded. It affected me. It affected me as a professional artist. And I had to learn. And I learned that I had to go back to school. And it changed my course of where I was, which brought me into the film industry.
So let's get on that. Let's talk about that next phase, film industry. Because that was going to be my next big question. So that's a great lead into that. So
Neil,
soaked up everything at the art, that changed you as an artist. You got better.
I got better, and I was working as a professional, both on the commercial end and then in the comic book end. And I was told, like, they were telling me, get ready for they were telling me things are changing. I was hearing from every person that was mentoring me that you need to learn more. You need to learn this because, things are, they were kind of like predicting the change of technology was about to hit us all. I was there. I remember one of the conventions that really became one of those things is when I was told by the colorist of Spider-Man, of John Romita Jr.'s colorist, turned and he says, "This is it. I guess I'm out of a job." I was like, "What happened?" And he says, they're doing computer coloring. And then he says, I don't have the money to get a system. And you got to remember, the laptop wasn't a laptop yet. Mm-hmm. The home system wasn't affordable to anyone. So you had to find ways to actually be part of this whole movement. And that new movement was the computer coloring. And that new movement was the scanner, which would change inkers and whatnot. So all of us were suddenly like who were freelancers. I had to go. And so I went back to school. And one of my changing points of school was when my boss basically made it very clear, unfortunately. He says, you know what? You can go and no one would ever care. He made it very terribly. He was terribly unprofessional in the sense where he said that, we don't like you here. You're just a kid, so to speak, and you can go and it doesn't matter. You're easily replaced. And it scared me because here I was after 6 years of building a relationship with a company that I could now actually be thrown on the street, and I couldn't use this place as a reference because I would be fired. And I wouldn't, and then I didn't have a degree. I didn't have anything to fall back on. And it went back to me talking to Brent Anderson and talking to Neil Adams, and then basically saying, the art school, going to art, get your art degree. And I wound up going to the academy. And after they told me that most of them did storyboards, I started to go into the Academy of Art, and they just started their movie program. And I was going to be a matte painter. So I wanted to do storyboards and matte painting in addition to comic books, because Bill Sienkiewicz, Neil Adams, Brent Anderson, Paul Chadwick all told me that we do storyboards when we're not doing comic books, bro. So they just, this is what we need to do. This is what you need to do and be prepared and learn about film. And so I had this new school that had the new film program. So I got into the film program, and then I told them I want to be a storyboard artist and a matte painter. And so I started taking all my film classes, and that's where I met my mentor, Mildred Arotro. And if you don't know that name, you know her boss by the name of Francis Ford Coppola.
Holy crap.
So Mildred,
and let's not forget, you just said amazing comic legends less than a minute ago, and then you just fucking throw Francis. What?
So Millie Arotro was Francis Ford Coppola's #1 editor, and she cut Bram Stoker's Dracula. So she cut Dracula, and she's working with Gus Van Sant, and she's worked with all the she's done La La Land. Since then, she's done La La Land. She's done the Wolverine movie. She's done Planet of the Apes. But there she was. She was my teacher, my first film class, teaching me editorial, finding out that I had storyboard background, and we hit it off. Was not exactly smooth to begin with because I knew zero about film, like zero. Like I knew nothing. I knew everything about comic books. I knew zero about film. And so there I was in the classroom. My most memorable moment is that she put on the film and she goes, "What do you think?" And then I raised my hand. I said, "Well, I think the film was kind of long. And I think the best thing about this was the transitions." And she goes, "Huh, that's what I told Francis." And then everybody looked at me like, oh, they moved away from me. And I said, "Francis who?" And then everybody moved away from me again. So all my classmates are like, oh, shit. And she goes, "Francis Ford Coppola." Oh, as in The Godfather. Like, oh, why don't you see me after class? So everybody thought I was in. That was it. And me, and I stayed behind. I felt so embarrassed because here I was. Obviously, I didn't know jack diddly. But Millie said, no, you're very honest. And you're obviously trying to learn. I said, "Yeah, I'm really sorry. I really apologize. I didn't mean to cause anything." He says, no. Your eye is very good. You seem to have a very good eye. You're catching all these things, So, and "I'm just very serious. I'm just really trying to learn how to do this." And so she says, "Why don't you come and see me at this address if you're really serious?" So there, she opened the door to actually me visit her. I didn't know where it was. It was in San Francisco. It was this warehouse. I had to take a taxi to get there. I did drive. I didn't have a car. So I eventually got to this address. It was just way on the outskirts with all the warehouses. All right. And it was burnt down. Like the building looked like it was burnt down. And it was raining. And I was like, oh, I got punked. And I decided, okay, I'm going to ring the bell. And then nothing happened. And I ringed it again and it hit the buzzer. Yes. And it's like, I was told to come here. Millie told me to come in to see you. Oh, come right in. So they open the door. I go in. And then I start to see the stuff. It's the studio that they did Nightmare Before Christmas.
Wow.
It was the stop motion place. Mm. And where I was James and the Giant Peach. They were just doing it. And then I saw the other classmates that I knew were advanced. And I got a chance to start visiting Millie, start learning. And that was it. That was the beginning of me like being recommended to The Matrix and a few other films that followed that, Warner Brothers, Paramount. And I owe everything to her telling me that I had something that.
Wow.
And so that's why my comic book life obviously got paused. I got called to do commissions and promo work, slightly before, Sony, when Sony finally bought the properties to Spider-Man, several artists were asked to do promo work. But my hand was in film and then my hand was in movies, and pretty much movies kind of slowly took more over until the point where I only did comic book appearances at the conventions and whenever someone needed storyboards or whatnot. But it was always movie related. So everything I was always doing was more movie related than anything. And eventually I got a chance to go to this studio that was just starting up, and they just had a movie out called Toy Story. And Millie had asked me, "Hey, why don't you come by and check me out?" And she says, "Hey, we're working on this film. They do these movies in like 7 years. Do you think you'd be like part of this?" And it was like, wow, 7-year commitment. And the company was called Pixar, and so that's where I got a chance to actually know the editorials and the storyboard artists of Pixar of that time of Toy Story 2. Craig Alpert, a friend of mine who I graduate, wound up being, he was my classmate who got a job with Millie through me, with me. We were classmates, and he wound up editing, my classmate wound up editing Toy Story 3 and did Lord of the Rings. So my friends and my contacts have just been like just here and here and here and here and here and here. And eventually from there, I had to make a decision because Millie was explaining to me this is a freelance gig. And by this time I had met my future wife and I've been in school going on for 7 years because I was working, I was doing intern work, I was doing comic book work, and going to school full time. And I had to figure it out. Oh, and I learned that the only time I could get an internship is if I was a student. And that's why I kept on extending my classes, taking more classes, because I got my internships through my professors at the school. And that extended my stay. And to the point where my counselor in Tove finally told me, you've been here for so long, the program has changed, and you basically are working on a master's right now. It's like you should really graduate. And it's like, but I really like it. It's like, Lawrence, the program has changed to the point where you are now past this. And I graduated and had my son. My son was there for my graduation. It was just funny. And I had to make a decision though, because of this path of like, I was now a dad, married. I need to be stable, and wound up working at a regular job while I built my career. And eventually I became a professor. So I became a professor for 15 years.
Wow.
So
teaching art and film?
Teaching film. I built the film. So I went back and taught at the university that I wound up graduating, and taught at the community college simultaneously, and working commercially in San Francisco, doing freelance working on commercials and videos and whatnot. So I kept my foot in there while drawing, while teaching as a professor, both at the university and over in Fremont at Ohlone College for 15 years. And that's how I met a lot of these students. And that's how I met Patricio.
And and that's what's going to be the next phase of my line of questioning.
Yes.
And, so let's get there, because man, we're almost on 2 hours, bro. Like,
oh, sorry, man.
It's so fascinating. No, all the love. I want you to tell your story. So let's just touch upon that about you're wearing the shirt, and that's how we came to meet. So I'm so honored by it. Just let's talk about that experience, because in it also, as we both know, it brought you to comic books again.
Yes.
So let's go there. Let's talk about getting involved with Lumpia.
Yes. So as a professor, I started having all these students coming from all over the place, from all over the community. And so I started opening it up. And then what I did as a professor for my film program is that I actually started teaching students from the ground up. I taught students how to make a film from beginning to end. I taught them how to make a script and how to like cast from camera, through the logistics of camera, the logistics of just like the camera language, the story language of how to like put a film together, and then actually shoot it. And we shot films together as a whole. And so by the end of every semester, every student was making a film, and then we would show these films in these showcases. So we had a mini film festival, and I would hire out my students because I would get these calls from people from my production, from the commercial work that I was doing. When I wasn't teaching, they would say, "Hey, do you know anybody who could do this?" I said, "Hey, I have a few students that I've been training." And I was actually giving students jobs directly from only one semester. They went from my class for 15 weeks. They got a job at the end of the semester. They were good enough. And I actually took some of those students to actually work on movies and music videos and commercials with me as my assistant. So I was directly handing people into the industry. And that's where this connection with Patricio started happening, is because some of my students wound up working on his set for his music videos, for the Viva video, and a few others that happened right shortly after the debut. And when my name started being handed out, they said, hey, you seem to need help. And they recommended me multiple times to Patricio's partner, AJ Calloway, who wound up, working as his editor and collaborator and producer. They finally gave me a call based upon their several students who actually wound up working for them, who came directly from my class. I finally spoke to them, and they liked that I was able to break down a film in front of them, like directly, like without even knowing the film or the music video. I was able to help. This is what needs to happen, and this is how you should shoot it. Here's the schedule. These are the things that are required to make this really smooth as possible. And these are the people that you're going to need, and these are how many people you're going to need to actually make this happen. And they were surprised that I was able to just analyze all that. And obviously coming from my experience, that became the start of a 15 year, close to 15 years, 13, 14 years of working with Pat, music videos and films and whatnot, short films. And we were just meshed. I liked him as a creator. And whenever he wanted to do something, I was all about it, because he was taking risks as a visionary. And I like for the fact that we were both comic book nerds, because we were referencing, when he found that I like comic books, we were able to talk in reference to a nerd shot. Yeah. So we had this nerd short speak on the set or while building a script, that we were able to reference these moments that allow me to, okay, this is what you're trying to do. And because of my knowledge and my background, I was able to guide or say, we need this. And then through the network, we were able to find it. So we built a lot together, the three of us, Pat, AJ, and myself, with Kid Heroes Productions. And it's been, I love the guy. I love these guys. They're like family to me, because their heart is in the right place. Their creativity is in the right place. And Lumpia came to me. I started to realize, oh man, I saw Lumpia, the original Lumpia, when I was teaching. One of my students brought me to that. And I started to you're the director. I started to realize you're the director. That I was like, who did this film? And here I am working with him after years, realizing that this is the team that did the original.
That's crazy.
And it's funny. It's like, whoa. And, I love the film. And it's like, too bad I didn't meet you back then. I would have loved to film that. I would have loved to be part of that. And I dropped that many times. But as the years went on, Pat and I were doing things that were closely resembling things that would happen later on in Lumpia, like the martial arts, the fight scenes, the big moments. And then we got an opportunity to actually do a comic book film called Black Tiger for Beyond Time Comics. Another fellow friend of John Hervey, Pat's, his name is John Hervey. So when Pat was asked to do a comic book adaptation, a short, he asked me to be a producer. He said, hey, would you do this? I was like, you kidding me? It's a comic book film. This is nerd dream extraordinaire, man. So here we were actually adapting a comic book property, a published comic book property. And we went at it. We reproduced it in record time, in such a quick time, with just things were happening. And that became the template of whether or not we would want to tackle on the possibility of a sequel of Lumpia 2. And that became our mission 7 years ago, 7.5 years ago, that, here it is. We're presenting it to the anniversary of Lumpia after 10 years. We'll see, and at the 10th anniversary, we saw that people wanted it. And that became our commitment, to do Lumpia with a vengeance. And it became that journey of from the ground up, literally everything they had learned and done in the film industry was now applying directly to Lumpia. everything from the big productions that I've worked on to, the independence was now being applied, and getting a chance to work creatively with Pat, and the rest of the teams, and building and pulling people from the film industry that I've actually known to actually help us out. And that became the dream, man. It just like we wound up doing and producing Loopy with a Vengeance, and finally got together an incredible amount of talent through the help of a lot of support of the fans, of the crowdfunding and the community, which again, I've learned quite a bit through Pat and AJ. They taught me so much about our community and me getting more acquainted and reacquainted time and time over. It allowed me to actually learn about, culturally wise, even more, that I was somewhat, I wouldn't say neglected, but my mom, again, was kind of like put aside, and make not just peace, but rejuvenated, and to realize that how I grew up in a Filipino community all over again. And it was no longer just having it as a personal memory and personal past. Now it became part of my professional, invigorant. And it also allowed me to really, really connect even more, on many levels, of Filipino artists of all sorts, performers and artistry again. And it's opened so much. And then the moment where we were trying to figure out what could we do and what we could do further to help Lumpia be more in the minds of others, the whole bit about doing a comic book was like, let's do a comic book. It's like, dude, this is like, you got a comic book artist right here. I'll be willing to do one of those things, and I'll be willing to do the stories, And we were able to gather together, just a team of people who were just jazzed about it. And he, having made friends with Will Sportasio over the years of the X-Men, and me having a background with Wills, which was kind of crazy, going, oh my gosh, we both know Wills, and it allowed us to actually go, let's do this. And the comic book came about, especially when we were asking what type of stories are we going to do. And I said, let's do everything that we couldn't do. I said, this is a comic book. There's no budget to it. We could do everything that we didn't and weren't able to do. And that's the reason why I wrote the stories that I did in the first one and the second one. Is like, this would have been cost us way too much money to do. But obviously, as a comic book, it was just a way to actually put that in there. And also, it was a chance for me to actually play with the styles that I was able to, people that I play tribute to, who've actually influenced me over the years, from Frank Miller to, Brent Anderson himself, and David Maccazelli, just all these giants that Tony DeZunga, just like all these folks that who've taught me these techniques that, hey, I'm now doing a Filipino character, an actual Filipino character with comic book qualities. He's got a utility belt, he's got some sidekicks, it's got, it's just like, and he's got martial arts, and he's got two variants of a costume, it's just like, it's just like, it has everything that a comic book could be, and people, I just remember when people were saying, it's about a guy who throws lumpia. I was like, I said 80 years ago and 60 years ago, a guy crawling up the wall was kind of like crazy, this is not, it's just like, just give it some time and this is going to be normal, it's just like, why not? We for us to argue a guy throwing lumpia, I'm just like, a guy who could fly, a guy who could shoot webs, like it's the same thing.
Exactly.
It's just a matter of like taking that story and just saying, you know what, these are the rules.
Yeah.
Have at it.
I love it.
And so that's where, the movie and comic book has become a fusion of great experiences for me. It's a love letter. Every time I get a chance to do a cover, I love, I love doing this stuff. I get a chance to draw these characters, and just go at it, and I love drawing my favorites, from DC and Marvel. I love drawing Batman and Spider-Man and so on and so forth. But I get a chance to draw these characters in ways that are just full of just my culture, my love, people that I know of, and do adventures that reflect us in ways that we probably wouldn't be seen on a regular basis. I get a chance to actually say, hey, let's do it. So I'm having a blast, man. And I'm very blessed, and you can see why I told the doctor that I have to come back. I have to do this. I cannot not be part of this. And for me to do a cover is like, oh, that's cool. But I really want to do a story. I really want to do this story. It's just, and even though the story that I did each time, both issue 1 and issue 2, I contributed 2 6-page stories, 6 pages on number 1 and 6 pages on number 2. But there's 6 pages of like opportunity. There's 6 pages of expression of my art. There's 6 pages of like my love. Because when you look at issue number 2, this is my journey of like, I want to do this the best way possible, because you're literally watching or looking at the evidence of someone who drew with his arm completely extended like this, night after night, day after day, and worked my hand to a point where I was doing every bit of me as possible, to give back both to my friend Pat, who allowed me to be part of this, my brother, and my friends and fellow artists who are in the movie, to go, hey, this is my love letter to you. Like, hey, I wanted to see this. We couldn't afford to do this, but I could put your story in this form, and really show that I'm really proud of what you've done for us. Let me do a different type of portrait, not a still picture, but put you in a story, in a situation that, an adventure that you can enjoy, and I'm just really thankful for everybody who's purchased the book, whether it was my cover or not, but just the book as a whole, because we're doing things from our heart, not because we have to. We're doing it because, hey, this is our vigilante. This is our superhero. These are our characters. This is our universe. This is the deep fried universe, that is full of fun. I mean, if you could have a talking duck in Marvel Comics, it comes in Adventures with Spider-Man and the rest of the Marvel characters. And you could have a guy who could throw Olympia and seek justice,
Hell yeah.
So, that's, I can't say, I mean, I could talk on and on and on, Pat. And I just like, I really, really appreciate just being here, sharing the journey that we can do this and we can make this happen, and this can continue to happen.
Oh yeah.
You just have to believe, and when the opportunity comes, stand by, stand with us,
Oh yeah. Well, we got another comic book coming, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
We had the convo with both interlude, prelude.
Yes.
I want to see. I would love to have a part in that deep fried universe, brother. If I can, because I have written and published comic books and managed talent as well. So I'm in there.
I just happen to know the director.
Story, I think I told you guys the last go round. But my story's kind of I think it's more like an after effect, and you guys were doing like the prelude at the time. So
we are.
If there's some small fashion, I'd love to participate.
We got issue number 3 coming out, and we'll definitely hit you up, for because I kind of know the director. I kind of know the creator of the I kind of know the Stan Lee of our universe. And this, the one thing I wanted to share is yesterday it was announced that we is, 2 days ago, we just announced that Lumpia with a Vengeance is now going to Comic-Con.
Yes.
We're going to Comic-Con this
special edition.
Special edition on the 26th and 26th through the 27th, 28th. And we're actually screening the movie there. So it's a Filipino superhero film, comic book
I'm
superhero
excited
film.
For you guys, man.
Oh my God.
It's insane.
We're stoked. It's in the same room that historically we've seen the Warner Brother animations and Warner Brother releases. So it's not a small corner room. It's actually a big place where they've done releases for the first time. And so our comic book is going to be there. We have a booth, and we're actually doing signings, and we have limited releases that are going to be shown. So we're actually going to have Lumpia with a Vengeance Comic-Con exclusives for those who are the down.
Dream.
Oh my God! And a panel, and come and see our cast and our crew. I'll be there. My son will be there, and we'll be signing off books, and limited pieces of artwork. And you'll get a chance to actually just talk and rap with us, but you get a chance to see the movie.
Yeah.
On Friday, for free. It's a big deal that we actually get a chance to actually see the film through Comic-Con. Dude, it's a dream. It's just like, it's a major blessing. And all within the same year of me having a stroke. Just like I had to come back.
What a wild year, brother, for you, man. Yes. But I'm so excited for you, man. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so thankful for you. Just giving me some time to just dig in a little bit more. I'm happy to call you a friend. Honored to call you a friend. Honored that you're here, brother. Because absolutely, as everything was going down, we were all in touch. Because times I was doing the ShoPowSho with you guys, and everybody's various appearances on here. I was getting updates, and brother, I'm thankful for the universe. You know what I'm saying? And just wish you nothing but the best. And I'm looking forward to the next conversation when this next project rolls out, and we can talk about that there again, have everybody back. And just, again, I'm thankful for this relationship, and I'm thankful for you, brother.
Absolutely.
My last question, you know how we do on the show, is because, I'm part of the Nerds of Color, and NRW Nerds Rule the World, is that nerd question. If you were to give a nerd TED style talk on anything, and you can't go with the go-tos that we already kind of know about you. You got to give us something brand new. What could you give a nerd TED style talk on? Can't be Superman. I already know that about you. Can't be film. We know about film. We know about, the comic books, maybe a specific comic book, or maybe even an anime. Give us, or give us something outside of the realm that we don't know that you're particularly nerdy about, and that, you could contest anybody on.
I got this. Is that I would do a TED talk on the Tribe. And if you don't know that name in comic book world, you should.
Strowman and Todd Johnson. Come on now.
No, this is the Tribe, the original Tribe. It's when Tony DeZunga and Ernie Chan and
I was thinking Image Comics Tribe.
Alex Nino, the original OGs of the comic book movement that came in during the 1970s, again during the time when I was a kid.
That's what I was talking about Keith about too.
Yep.
Keith and I were talking about that.
I would do a whole talk about them coming into the industry, how Neil Adams kind of was like, they call him Ninong. They actually call him the Godfather because he brought in and recommended this troupe.
Yeah.
Starting with Tony DeZunga. And it's funny that how Tony was the person who actually helped create Jonah Hex.
Yep.
A American cowboy major figure in the DC universe. And what I love to talk about this as a TED Talks is for the fact that I actually have ties with Alfredo Alcala, who actually comes from the Philippines through my mom.
Shut up.
Yeah. She actually introduced this whole. I got introduced to the Tribe actually through Filipino comic books from my mom on Guam.
All right. So here's the thing: when I had Keith on, do you know about his documentary he did about the Philippine creators, the Comic Hero?
I heard about it. I've always wanted to see it too.
Okay, I'll talk to him. I'll send you. He sent me a link. I'll I'll check with him and send you the link. I'm having Keith back to talk about our classic Philippine comics creators. I gotta have you on that with us.
Oh, please do. Because Tony DeZunga was only 45 minutes away from where I live, and he invited us to actually go to his garage and his studio to actually learn how to draw.
Oh yeah. Dude.
So yeah, this is like a big deal for me.
Lawrence, I'll let you know it's gonna be a ShoPowSho special. Keith Scott, Lawrence Iriarte. I want to see if I can get Wills to come on as well, because we were talking about Gary Alangualan. You remember Gary?
Yeah. Oh my God. You got it. You have to get these guys on because dude,
we want to show love, and Alex Nino, Tony DeZuniga, everybody. Just all the cast that came before, brother, and Alfred Akala, just all those legends, that paved the way for Lanil Yu, for you name it, just all
even Wilson himself,
So,
totally. I love
Lawrence,
those guys.
One last thing for the audio listeners, how can they follow you, reach out to you, subscribe, all that? Let's throw them socials out.
Definitely, you could actually get me on Instagram. Look me up as Lawrence Iriarte, first and last name. Facebook, hit me up. I still do Facebook at Lawrence John Iriarte. And then you could hit me up at LGI. I want to make sure that you get this right, because I do work. People actually have asked me for commissions and whatnot, but you can hit me up at ljiriarte.ici.comics@gmail.com if you are interested in storyboards or even custom work, stuff like this. I do stuff like that. I do commissions and whatnot, so I have people who are actually asking me to do like quick convention stuff, or I do prints that I have, that if you want to order any of my prints that I do for the convention. So again, that's ljiriarte.ici.comics@gmail.com, and hit me up and just ask for the image of your dreams, and we'll make that happen, man. Just nerd out with me, because I love to nerd on big requests. I love the more nerdier the better. I get some really crazy requests that people have given me, so I love the mashups, and they're fun to do. So
there you go. Hit my brother Kuya Lawrence up. I also have all of that in the description below as well once this drops and is out there. So if you're driving in the car listening to this, when you get home, check it out on YouTube. I'll have it in the description. Kuya Lawrence, it's your boy Kuya P. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at the Legend Kuya P, over at the Nerds of Color, and of course ShoPowSho, and at the NRW, and at New Release Wednesday, where nerds rule the world.
Yes,
Kuya Lawrence, appreciate you, man. Again, thank you again. Salamat po to our audience. Kababayan, mahal kita, salamat. Until the next time, ShoPowSho. Out of here. All right.
In full color, you see me? The hard knock life, comics, movies, and TV, pop culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this. This is the hard knock life, but not the chica kind. More like the people in the world seeking perspectives with a different line. The kids who share their interests together with a similar kind. When they said Don Glover for Spider-Man, they didn't mind. The activists, directors, comments, and the lectures. Fanboys, professional artists, and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC. In full color, you see me? The hard knock life, comics, movies, and TV, pop culture with a different perspective.
Hi, this is Lawrence Iriarte from Olympia with a Vengeance. I'll be coming on to the ShoPowSho along with Kuya P. Check me out, as well as hear about what's going on with Olympia with a Vengeance, as well as check us out on olympiamovie.com as we are about to hit off the Comic-Con special edition in November. Hear more about that. And check me out as well at lgiiriarte.ici.comics.com. And check us out at kidheroes.com and lumpiamovie.com. Hope to see you soon, guys, and check us out at the convention. But check us out on the ShoPowSho with Kuya P. Hi, this is Lawrence Iriarte from Lumpia with a Vengeance. I'm the producer and the comic book artist as well for the comic book, also Lumpia with a Vengeance. Catch us up at the ShoPowSho. And the things I'd like to share about my Filipino heritage is that it's a cornucopia of story, a cornucopia of culture, a cornucopia of just variety of things and sources that are untapped, from characters to folklore, things that I'm so dear to me that have made up our movie, Lumpia with a Vengeance, as well as our comic book, but also future projects that I would like to do, both as a creator, as a producer, a director, an artist, is that my heritage means infinite amount of possibility.